You know, usually when we talk about like the legacy of a monumental historical figure, the lines of inheritance are pretty clear cut.
Right. It's usually a very linear progression.
Exactly. You have one nation, one continuous government, and they build the statues, They print the money with the person's face on it, and they just sort of claim that legacy.
Yeah, it's the standard way historical memory operates. You claim your founder, and nobody else really challenges that ownership.
But then you look at modern Chinese history, and suddenly that historical family tree is just split right down the middle in the most dramatic way
Oh,
possible.
it's for sure. It's totally unique.
Right. So I want you to imagine a historical figure so universally monumental that two fiercely opposing modern governments both claim him as their ultimate founding hero.
It's kind of wild to even think about.
It really is. You have the government in Taiwan, the Republic of China, honoring him as the father of the nation. And then, at the exact same time, the government in Beijing, the PRC, reveres him as the forerunner of the revolution.
Yeah, it's like two bitter rivals pointing at the exact same architect and saying, he built my house.
Yes. It's the absolute definition of a political paradox.
And it forces us to really ask how a single ideology could be elastic enough, right, to be claimed by such vastly different modern political systems. And we should be clear, we aren't taking a side on who has the right claim here. We're just looking at how fascinating it is that they both do.
Absolutely. We're just reporting on what the historical sources say. And the man at the center of this geopolitical tug of war is Sun Yat-sen.
The one and only.
So today, our mission in this deep dive is to really explore his story. We're tracing his transformation from a village boy who literally smashed local idols to a global fugitive and ultimately, the ideological architect of modern China.
And honestly, looking through the massive stack of sources we have for you today.
Oh, it's a huge stack.
Yeah, we are talking translated Qing Dynasty intelligence reports, British Foreign Office records, historical biographies, even recent medical analyses of his autopsy.
Which is wild.
Right, and it does not read like a dry history textbook at all.
No, not even close. We're talking about a guy who experienced a literal kidnapping in London. He used forged Hawaiian birth certificates to dodge immigration laws. And, well, he actually started out as a medical doctor.
It literally reads like an international espionage thriller. I mean, the late 19th and early 20th centuries were a time when China was facing this massive existential crisis from foreign imperialism and severe domestic decay.
Right, things were falling apart.
Exactly. So Sun Yat-sen wasn't just running around the globe having fun adventures. He was actively trying to save an entire civilization from collapsing under the weight of its own antiquated systems.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Fine.
Because to understand how a poor tailor's son from a Chinese village becomes this globally connected revolutionary, we really have to look at his education.
It's a huge pivot.
Yeah, and it's a really dramatic pivot early in his career. The geopolitical realities of his upbringing completely shape his worldview. So, he was born in Guangdong in 1866, but at age 13, his whole world just shifts when he moves to Hawaii to live with his older brother.
And that geographic shift, it triggers a massive cognitive dissonance for him.
How so?
Well, in Hawaii, he's attending the Iolani School and later Oahu College. And he's suddenly immersed in English, mathematics, science, and critically, the history of the American Republic.
Oh, wow. So he's getting a completely Western curriculum.
Exactly. He's studying figures like Abraham Lincoln and Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah.
He's absorbing these concepts of republicanism, like the idea that a nation's sovereignty comes from its people, not a divinely appointed emperor.
Which is totally opposite to what he knew.
Right. That was entirely alien to the imperial Qing Dynasty system back home, where power just flowed strictly from the top down.
And he also absorbs Christianity during this period, right?
It does, yeah.
He converts, gets baptized in Hong Kong in 1884. And the sources note that he actually viewed revolution as a sort of salvation mission. Like, he didn't just want to change the bureaucracy.
He wanted to save the soul of the nation.
Exactly.
His conversion to Christianity was deeply intertwined with his push for modernization. Christianity, to him, it represented the modern Western progress he wanted for China.
Right.
But the other major pillar of his early adulthood that we really need to look at is medicine.
Yeah, the doctor phase.
Right. He studies under a Christian missionary and eventually attends the Hong Kong College of Medicine for Chinese. And he's brilliant, too. I mean, he was one of only 2 students to graduate in his class in 1892.
He's brilliant, but he also has this intense, almost destructive, rebellious streak from a really young age.
Oh, yeah.
Like, imagine being his parents. When he returned to his home village at 17, he and a friend were so disgusted by traditional folk healing and the worship of this wooden idol of the North Star god.
They actually physically smashed the idol.
They broke it apart, literally.
Yeah.
And it made the villagers so angry, his parents had to send him away to Hong Kong just to keep the peace.
And that moment, it's deeply symbolic of his entire philosophy.
Yeah.
He is violently rejecting the old superstitious ways.
Yeah.
He believes in science, in medicine, in measurable reality. And initially, he thinks he can bring this measurable modernity to China through internal reform. Like, he thinks he can just fix the machine from the inside.
Which leads to his first big political move. In 1894, he writes this massive, like 8,000-character petition to a powerful Qing viceroy named Li Hongzhang.
A huge document.
Yeah, he's essentially saying, here are my ideas to modernize China. We need railways, we need agricultural schools, we need to overhaul education.
Right.
He travels all the way to Tianjin to deliver it, and he gets completely ignored. He doesn't even get an audience.
Ouch.
Yeah. Think about this in the context of, like, a modern startup founder. Sun Yat-sen started out with a mission to fix bodies as a doctor. Then he creates this massive pitch deck, the 1894 petition.
Right, trying to fix the country from within the corporate structure.
Exactly. But when the establishment rejects his pitch, he realizes the entire corporate structure is flawed. He can't just fix bodies, and he can't reform the system. He has to completely dismantle and replace the system.
He pivots to revolution.
Yes, a total pivot.
And his exposure to Western medical science actually gave him a completely different diagnostic framework for China's illness, compared to the traditional reformers of his time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. After China's humiliating defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895, traditional intellectuals thought the Manchu Qing government just needed some updates.
Like a software patch.
Exactly. They pushed for the 100 Days reform, essentially trying to treat the symptoms of the empire's decline. But Sun Yat-sen, looking through his unique diagnostic lens, concluded that the dynastic system itself was a terminal disease.
Wow.
The corruption and inefficiency weren't just symptoms, they were the pathology. The only cure was to excise the empire completely and build a modern republic from scratch.
So, because he realizes the system is terminal, he launches his first real treatment plan, right? The 1895 Guangzhou uprising.
And it is an absolute disaster.
Total disaster. The plans leak, his childhood friend is captured and executed, and Sun suddenly finds himself a wanted man. He's fleeing for his life with a massive bounty on his head.
And the failure of 1895 completely changes his methodology. He realizes he cannot operate inside China anymore.
It's too dangerous.
Way too dangerous. The secret police are too entrenched. So he has to build an insurgency from the outside, which launches him into his life as a global fugitive, traveling the globe to raise funds and build a transnational revolutionary network.
And this leads to one of the most cinematic moments in the sources.
Well, this is why.
The 1896 London kidnapping. Sun is in London trying to raise money, and he gets detained inside the Chinese legation.
They just grab him.
Yeah. The King's Secret Service plans to literally smuggle him out of the country on a ship and send him back to China for a gruesome execution.
And the thing is, the legation had diplomatic immunity, meaning the building was technically Chinese soil.
Right.
The British police couldn't just walk in and demand his release without triggering a massive international incident. He was locked in a room waiting to die.
But Sun manages to persuade a sympathetic British servant working in the legation to sneak a message out to his former medical teacher, James Cantley.
Which is incredibly lucky.
So lucky. And Cantley goes straight to the press. He gets the Times and the Globe involved, and suddenly it's a massive media scandal.
The British public is outraged.
Absolutely outraged that a foreign government is kidnapping people on the streets of London. The British Foreign Office is forced to step in, and after 12 days, Sun is released.
And the crazy thing is, instead of being this shadowy, secret rebel, he walks out of that legation as a global celebrity.
A household name in the UK.
Exactly. He even capitalizes on it by writing a best-selling book about the ordeal called Kidnapped in London.
Talk about turning a negative into a positive.
Truly. And that international fame became a crucial, tangible asset. As he traveled through Japan, Southeast Asia, and the United States, he used that notoriety to organize the Tongmengwei, or the United League.
Uniting the factions.
Yeah, he was bringing together various fragmented revolutionary factions under one recognized banner.
He was also incredibly resourceful, honestly almost brazen, about how he traveled.
Oh, definitely.
Like in 1904, to get around the Chinese Exclusion Act, which normally would have blocked him from entering the U.S. to fundraise, he manages to secure a forged Hawaiian birth certificate.
He literally claims he was born in Maui.
Yes, he gets detained in San Francisco, fights the deportation order with a Washington, D.C. law firm, wins, and heads off on his fundraising tour. Let's just pause and appreciate the audacity of that.
That's next level confidence.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I have to push back on his actual track record here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Reading the sources, he launches uprising after uprising in 1907, 1908, 1911, and they almost all fail disastrously.
They do.
People are dying, weapons are being seized. If he's constantly failing at these actual military uprisings, how on earth does he keep getting funding from people? Is he just an incredibly charismatic salesman selling a pipe dream?
What's fascinating here is Sun's brilliant conceptualization of the overseas Chinese as the mother of the revolution.
Okay, explain that.
He realized that the millions of Chinese expatriates living in places like Siam, Malaya, Singapore, and the U.S. were a massive, untapped geopolitical resource.
Right.
They had capital from working abroad, and more importantly, they were entirely safe from the king's secret police. So he wasn't just begging for money to buy rifles, he was building a transnational ideological network.
So walk us through how that actually functioned on the ground. How do you weaponize an expatriate population?
He did it by weaponizing literacy and shared identity. In Singapore and Malaya, he initiated the establishment of reading clubs, like the United Chinese Library.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you have to picture this. Thousands of overseas laborers, many of whom were illiterate dock workers or miners. Sun's network would provide books and stage public readings of revolutionary newspapers.
So they didn't even need to be able to read themselves.
Exactly. A literate student would stand up and read anti-king essays aloud to a room full of workers. He was completely bypassing the king's domestic control of information, creating a shared identity among the diaspora.
Wow.
Think of it like modern crowdfunding mixed with decentralized social media.
Yeah.
They weren't just funding a militia. They were actively buying into the idea of a new modern Chinese nation that they would eventually return to.
Okay, I see. He's bidding the user base and the community infrastructure before the product even launches.
That's a great way to put it.
And because he successfully built this massive user base abroad, when the spark finally catches, it explodes.
It really does.
Right. For over a decade, Sun plans these uprisings that end in tragedy. Then, in October 1911, the Wuchang Uprising kicks off. This is the start of the Xinhai Revolution that finally overthrows over 2,000 years of imperial rule.
A monumental shift.
And ironically, where is the forerunner of the revolution when his revolution finally succeeds?
He's literally on the other side of the planet. He's in Denver, Colorado, in the middle of a fundraising tour.
He finds out about his own successful revolution by reading the local American newspaper at breakfast.
Did you imagine?
It's insane. So he drops everything, rushes back to China, arriving in December 1911, and the provisional government in Nanjing elects him as the provisional president of the newly formed Republic of China. He finally has the job he spent his life fighting for.
He has the title, yeah, but he holds the actual power for a matter of weeks.
Only weeks.
Yeah, the provisional government was incredibly fragile.
Yeah.
I mean, they had grand ideals, a new calendar, and they were drafting a provisional constitution. But they didn't have the one thing that actually secured power in a post-imperial vacuum.
Which was?
They had no money, and they had no real army.
Ah, and the most powerful military force in the country was the Beihang Army, right?
Exactly.
A massive modern military machine controlled by an ambitious former king general named Yuan Shikai.
Yuan had the guns, and he'd been promised the presidency by his own factions if he could convince the king emperor to officially abdicate and avoid a protracted bloodbath.
And this leads to what has to be one of the most painful pragmatic compromises in history.
It really is.
Sun voluntarily steps down as president in early 1912 and hands the leadership of his new republic to Yuan Shikai.
Just keeps it away.
Think about that. It's like spending 20 years building a revolutionary new company, suffering through kidnapping and exile, finally getting the company off the ground, and then handing the CEO title to a rival warlord just to get the product out the door. Why give it up?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see the brutal logic behind Sun's decision.
Right.
He was terrified of a massive, prolonged civil war.
Right.
And it wasn't just about the loss of Chinese lives. He knew that if China descended into total chaos, foreign imperial powers like Britain, Russia, or Japan would use the instability as an excuse to step in and carve a country up like a melon.
They were just waiting for a reason.
Exactly. So he sacrificed his own power to keep the nation intact, believing he could somehow constrain Yuan Shikai with a democratic constitution and a functioning parliament.
But that compromise violently backfires. Sun's party, the newly formed KMT, actually wins a massive victory in the first democratic elections. In response, Yuan Shikai almost certainly orders the assassination of the KMT's brilliant young parliamentary leader, Song Jiaoren, right at the Shanghai train station.
As a brazen political murder.
Yeah, and Sun realizes constitutions are useless against bullets. He tries to launch a second revolution against Yuan in 1913, but he lacks the military strength, and he's forced to flee into exile in Japan once again.
Back to square one.
And Yuan then bans the KMT and literally tries to crown himself emperor, which completely shatters the country into regional military fiefdoms.
So the warlord era begins. Sun is watching his beautiful republic shatter into chaos.
It must have been devastating.
It was. The failure of the parliamentary system forces Sun to a grim realization. Pure ideology, overseas funding, and democratic constitutions are not enough.
You need force.
Right. If he wants to reunify China, he needs his own loyal army, and he needs powerful, radical allies who know how to organize one.
So he sets up a rival military government in Guangzhou in the south. But to launch a northern expedition to defeat the warlords, he forms the First United Front.
A huge turning point.
He explicitly allies his KMT party with the newly formed Chinese Communist Party, and he takes direct support from the Soviet Union. Soviet advisors like Mikhail Borodin come in, they bring massive funding, and they help him set up the Whampoa Military Academy to train a real, disciplined revolutionary army.
It's a staggering geopolitical pivot. Vladimir Lenin is praising Sun, and Sun is praising Lenin right back. They're exchanging telegrams of mutual support.
Hold on. I have to interrupt here because this logic feels contradictory.
Okay, let's hear it.
Why would the Soviet Union, fresh off a massive communist revolution, give money and guns to a guy whose philosophy is half American republicanism and half Christian salvation?
It seems weird, right?
Yeah. And conversely, why is Sun taking their money? So what does this all mean? We have a devout Christian, heavily influenced by Abraham Lincoln and American capitalism, who in his final years is taking military advice from Lenin's Soviet Union. How do we reconcile that?
We reconcile it through mutual pragmatism.
Okay.
The Soviets wanted anti-imperialist allies in Asia to secure their eastern borders against Western powers. And Sun Yat-sen wasn't dogmatic. He was entirely focused on the outcome. His overarching political philosophy was the three principles of the people: nationalism, democracy, and livelihood.
Right, the three principles.
And that last principle, livelihood, is where the overlap happens, because it included strong socialist elements.
How so? The sources mention he was heavily influenced by the Western economist Henry George.
Exactly. Henry George was an American political economist who popularized the land value tax.
Okay.
The core idea is that people should own the value they produce themselves. But the economic value derived from land, like its natural resources and location, should belong equally to all members of society.
Oh, I see.
Sun looked at the agrarian poverty in China, where wealthy landlords hoarded land and peasants starved, and he saw Georgist economics as the perfect solution. By taxing the underlying value of the land rather than taxing human labor, he wanted to equalize wealth.
That makes a lot of sense for that era.
Right. Sun explicitly stated that he wanted to use foreign capital to build a future socialist society, preventing the massive wealth inequalities he had witnessed in the West. He was willing to synthesize wildly diverse global ideas: American republicanism, Georgist land reform, Soviet military organization, to fix the specific Chinese crisis at hand. He refused to be boxed into a single dogma.
He's just pulling the most effective tools from every ideological toolbox.
Precisely.
But tragically, he builds the academy, he trains the army, but his body fails before he can see the house built. Sun Yat-sen dies in Beijing in March 1925 at the age of 58, long before the country is reunified.
It's very sudden.
And interestingly, the sources highlight a modern medical debate about his death. For decades, it was reported he died of liver cancer. But recently, a faded autopsy report by a pathologist named James Cash surfaced, suggesting it was actually gallbladder cancer that had metastasized to the liver.
It's a fascinating historical footnote about the medical reality of his decline. But the real historical earthquake happens the moment he stops breathing. His death kicks off a massive, decades-long battle over his ghost.
Here's where it gets really interesting. With Sun gone, that first united front fractures almost immediately.
It just falls apart.
You have Chiang Kai-shek claiming the right-wing nationalist legacy of the movement. He launches the Northern Expedition, unifies the country nominally, but then violently purges the communists.
Right.
Meanwhile, the communists completely reinterpret Sun's ideology. Mao Zedong coins the new three principles of the people, claiming that true communism is the natural, inevitable conclusion of Sun's thought, allowing them to claim his left-wing legacy.
Both of these warring factions desperately needed Sun's legitimacy to govern. They needed his ideological halo to justify their authority to the Chinese people.
And to make that halo shine perfectly, they had to flatten out the man himself.
They absolutely did.
We talked earlier about how his literal first act of rebellion as a teenager was destroying a religious idol. But after his death, the party constitution designates him the permanent, eternal party president.
Incredible irony.
Muslim generals in the warlord era actually made people bow to his portrait. He is even worshipped as a literal saint today in the Vietnamese religion of Caodeism. A man who violently hated idolatry became the ultimate idol.
This raises an important question about how we process historical memory. Because both sides needed him to be the flawless father of the nation, they actively ignored his flaws, his contradictions, and his messy humanity.
And looking at the sources, he had plenty of flaws and contradictions.
Oh, definitely.
For all his progressive views on democracy, he supported eugenics and strongly opposed birth control because he thought China needed a massive population to resist Western imperialism.
Right.
And his personal life was incredibly messy. We are talking about a devout Christian who married a 15-year-old Japanese girl named Kaoru Atsuki while he was already married to his first wife. And then he abandoned that teenage girl in Japan while she was pregnant.
Historical figures are rarely the sanitized marble symbols we turn them into. The myth of Sun Yat-sen was deliberately constructed to serve the political needs of the governments that followed him. They needed a unifying symbol far more than they needed a complex, flawed human being.
Which brings us back to his ultimate legacy for you, the listener. Sun Yat-sen's life proves that true historical impact isn't just about winning battles or holding political office.
Not at all.
If you look at his actual resume, he failed in almost all of his direct military uprisings. He held the power of the presidency for mere months. And yet, he provided the ideological blueprint, the global funding network, and the sheer relentless willpower that outlasted all of his own personal failures.
He diagnosed the illness of an empire, and even though he didn't live to administer the final cure, he built the hospital and trained the doctors, who ultimately did.
And that leaves us with a final thought to ponder today. We talked a lot about his brilliant strategy of using the overseas diaspora, traveling the world, using reading clubs, and forging documents to build a transnational network of funding and ideological support.
The mother of the revolution strategy.
Exactly. Imagine trying to execute that exact same strategy today. In an era of sophisticated digital surveillance, internet firewalls, and instant global communication, could a modern revolutionary successfully build an underground transnational movement from abroad? Or has technology made that strategy impossible to replicate?
It's a really compelling question.
It is something to think about as you navigate our hyper-connected world.